My name is George Elliott Clarke. Right now it's still 2013, the very end of 2013. And this year is important to me because it's now been 30 years since I've been publishing collections of poetry. And in fact, Traverse is my 13th collection of poetry. And I'm not including my verse plays here. I'm just talking about works of poetry, impure, poetry novels, poetry collections, and so on, but not poetry plays. So in that case, then it's 13. So here it is, the end of 2013, getting ready to publish Traverse with Exile, a great little publisher. I have to talk about the genesis of this book because it's very unusual. For most of my books, most of them, the vast majority of them, have been written over many years. A poem here, a poem there. Even if it's a poem novel, I have a plot, I have characters, and I develop it over a period of time. And I try to publish some portions of the book, some of the poems here and there in little magazines over a period of several years. Traverse is a very strange book for me. My 13th collection is 13th work of poetry, very strange for me because of the fact that the vast majority of the book was written in one day, 8 years ago, soon to be 9 years ago. But it's related actually in a sense to what happened on July 1, 1975. July 1, 1975. So this is a very long gestation, 38 years for this book to come together in one sense. On the other hand, it also came together in one day. And it's coming together in terms of its publication now over a period of really only about 8 weeks. So it has a very strange chronology. But let me talk about that for a moment. July 1, 1975, 15 years old, Halifax, Nova Scotia, just finished junior high school, about to enter Queen Elizabeth High School, grade 10. I just got out of grade 9. It was a wonderful time in grade 9, et cetera, et cetera. It was also a traumatic experience for me at the age of 15 because of the fact that I'd been cut from the basketball team because I was no good playing basketball. And then I tried to join my Baptist church choir in Halifax. My parents wanted me to join it, but the choir director had other ideas. Once she heard me sing, she sent me home. So there I was, 15, with a damaged ego. Couldn't sing, couldn't play basketball, didn't know any musical instruments, and I'd studied trombone, but I found trombone to be a boring instrument, so I gave it up. So there you go. So there I was, 15, and unskilled in all the things that could have brought me popularity. I was good at long distance running, got a bunch of trophies and medals for running the mile and the 2 mile and the half mile and so on and so forth. And I was very good at that. But those are sports of isolation and not sports that bring you adulation in high school for the most part. So what was I going to do? The answer was to write songs. So July 1, 1975, I sat down, Dominion Day as it was called then, and started to write songs because I wanted to be popular. And I thought this would be a way to do it. If I couldn't sing, didn't know any musical instruments, at least I could write songs. So I started writing songs, 4, 5, 6 songs a day. I usually didn't have a tune in mind. Sometimes I did, but usually I didn't. They were just words written in verse form. But then, in order to become what I hope would be a better songwriter, I started reading books about how you write songs. And all these books started to tell me about people like Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, etc. And of course, Lennon McCartney, etc., etc., etc. But I really took to Bob Dylan's music as an alienated teen, as an alienated black teen in Halifax. I felt that Bob Dylan's music really spoke to where I was at that point in my intellectual development as a kid, as an artist in development, et cetera, et cetera. And as I studied Dylan's oeuvre, especially the 1960s masterpieces, the albums, especially Blonde on Blonde, Highway 61 Revisited, and Bringing It All Back Home, especially those 3 albums in particular, plus a whole bunch of others before and after. I began to realize that what I was really missing was an education in African American blues songs. So I came to African American blues music through Dylan. And his performances, which are very much indebted to African American and folk music, of course, in general, in the United States. And so then in reading the poetry of the blues, Sam Charter's book, for instance, and so on and so forth, I began to really understand that this could be an approach for me to take if I wanted to get into writing poetry in order to be a better songwriter. And so this is already probably too long a discussion of my evolution from being a songwriter to being a poet, or trying to be a poet. But anyway, this is how it began. So July 175, I start writing these songs, and I begin then to write poetry in order to be a better songwriter. Fast forward, 1983, I published my first book of poetry, Saltwater Spirituals and Deeper Blues, Potter's Field Press in Halifax, and I thought I was a poet. I got a poetry book. That makes me a poet. So that was wonderful. But I soon realized that I still had a lot to learn about the art and so on, and especially about finding my own voice. So I continued to write, continued to study, continued to try my hand at different things, and my second book came out, Wildlife Falls, 1990, and I think by then I started to have a sense of what my voice probably was or is, et cetera, et cetera. Since then, I've published 12 collections of poetry, 4 verse plays, 4 libretti. I've had a feature film made, a film made of my opera, Beatrice Chancy, with James Rolfe, composed by James Rolfe. And I've also, of course, become a professor at the University of Toronto, currently visiting professor at Harvard University, specializing in African Canadian literature. It's a long way of saying that I've continued to be an apprentice to this art of poetry, and as well as becoming a scholar along the way. On July 1, 2005, 30 years into trying to be a poet, I was visiting Halifax, Nova Scotia, again, my home city, with my daughter, and decided I would write a long poem that day, only on that day, July 1, 2005, to celebrate for myself 30 years of trying to be a poet.